Well, hello, hello, hello once again, and welcome back to another episode of the Summer Spotlight 2020. I am your host, Gayle Nicholson. Thank you so much for joining us here today. If you're watching on Facebook, please give us some love, some hearts, some likes, maybe make a comment or two. And if we see them, we'll mention it. And also, if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe. We are growing, and I would love to have you along for the ride. All right, so today I get to introduce you to this delightful lady who is a writer, a speaker, and even more importantly, a writing coach. And she has a fantastic story to tell you about. So I am just going to introduce her. Welcome to the show, Ms. Myra Levine, writer, speaker, and writing coach from MyraLevine.com. Thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
I am fine. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we know each other through a mutual contact from that's also a member of the Success Engineers group that I'm a member of, Dan Curry. And I just want to give him a shout out because, as much as he likes to be the wizard behind the curtain in life, just fixing things and helping people and not really wanting to be in the spotlight himself, literally, because I've invited him twice. He's a connector and a doer and a problem solver, and so I just wanted to give him a hello and respect. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about you and Dan and how you know each other.
We both belong to a networking group called Gold Star. That's where I met Dan. And as soon as I heard what he did, I realized I need him because I have about this much patience with technology. And my husband's a computer guy, but he's more IT. And when something goes wrong with my laptop, and I would text him at work and say, if you can't come home in the next 5 minutes, the laptop goes out the window. He really couldn't leave work to do that, but I could always text Dan. Dad would talk me off the ledge and come over or have me bring him my laptop and he would fix it. He's awesome.
He is, he is. So if you have any problems with your computers, reach out on Facebook to Dan Curry. Indie IT, I believe, is his company, correct?
Yeah, Indy's IT department, and he's very good with Indy IT security, which is a big thing.
Excellent, excellent stuff. All right, now to the task at hand today, Ms. Myra. Please tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into writing and becoming a writing coach. Let's hear it.
Well, I wrote short stories in high school. I told all my friends I was going to write a novel someday and I would not change my name, even if I got married, so they would all know me. And then Facebook came along and you don't have to do that. Your maiden name becomes your middle name and all your friends find you. But I have a journalism degree from the University of Illinois, although I never intended to ever practice journalism. It taught me how to write short and sweet. I started a video production company a few years after I left college.
Mm-hmm.
And my business partner, who was older than I was and more the engineering type, passed away. And I took over our business. I wrote almost every script we ever wrote, ever produced, a lot of training in sales and marketing, and a lot of political ads. But I always dreamed about writing that novel that I thought about in high school. I ended up adopting a baby girl from China and then realized I better get married. She needs a father. So I found a great guy and we're still married. And I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time, gave up the active role in my business and started on the novel when my son, who was also adopted, when he was 4 years old and finally went up to preschool. And I had 2 afternoons, 3 hours of time with no kids to write. I worked on the novel for 4 years. I thought I was an absolute genius. I had a writing group and they told me I was good. I went off to a conference and an agent actually approached me and said, I hear good things about you. I want to see your novel. Send me the first 50 pages. And I thought, this is so fantastic. I will become the first writer in the history of writers to experience no rejection. This is great. And then about 5 months later, if you remember the mimeograph machines, I
Oh,
got a
yeah.
mimeographed rejection letter you could barely read. It had been copied so many times. And I contacted the agent because I had that much nerve. And she said, it's not ready. And it was shocking. And I pouted for a few days. And then I realized, okay, maybe there's something about writing a novel that I don't know. I wrote commercials. I certainly wrote a lot of political ads. You think that would prepare you for fiction writing, but not adequately, apparently. And so I spent the next 10 summers in classes at the Iowa Summer Writing Festival, realized how much I didn't know. Took me a total of 14 years to get that first novel out. And now I've written a second one and I'm working on my third.
That's phenomenal. That's a great story. That is really a great story, and I love your sense of humor. That political stories prepared you for fiction. That's awesome. Yeah, that's wow. Really amazing, even that you were able to do that. You've got me beat though. I've got a novel that hasn't seen the light of day in almost 25 years. I don't know that it ever will. Um,
Well, this would be the time to pull it out
you know
because
what?
now
You're right.
I didn't write for 14 straight years. About 7 years into the first novel, I was stuck. I didn't know where to begin. And I had a health scare.
Mm-hmm.
And as a mom, my first thought was, okay, well, you're clearly going to die. And who's going to raise your kids if you die? And it occurred to me there should be a system for that. There should be some way for a dead mother to continue to raise their children because no one can do it like I can do it. So it gave me an idea for another novel, and I started working on that. Then I went back to the first one and read it and thought, this is not as bad as I thought it was. I can fix this, I can make it better. So that's where the second novel came from. But that year or two that I took off from the first novel was what I needed to do to get perspective on it.
Sometimes it does need to simmer, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You get so wrapped up in it that you can't see the truth of where it's good and where it's bad.
Yeah. Yeah. That is true. What was the name of that first book that you have out there now?
The first novel is called Revenge of the Soccer Moms.
I love
And
it.
I
And
kind of like a couple of titles.
is it available now? Is it like on Amazon?
Amazon.com. You can find it by the title, Revenge of the Soccer Moms, or I wrote under M.E. Levine because, and I'm not the only woman who's ever thought this, that if there's some doubt as to my gender, I might be taken more seriously.
A
That's
very famous J.K.
sadly,
Rowling comes to mind. Yeah.
yes, yes. And I just read a couple books by Charles Todd, who turns out there is no Charles Todd. Charles Todd is a mother and son writing team.
I
But
did
it's
not know that. That's
yeah,
awesome.
and they're excellent books. So you can find me under M.E. Levine, but if it helps if you know the title too.
Nice.
And the second novel is called The Dead Mothers Club.
Now
So
that's the one that you're offering to our viewers as a free download, right?
yes, exactly. That
Awesome.
just came in May.
And that's the one that's premised on a story. If you had passed away, how would your children be raised?
Right. And that's another case where I worked on that novel for well over a year. And then I realized you are making this too easy for the dead mom because this has become your little wish fulfillment book where she finds this wonderful way to interact with her kids. Whereas a good novel, usually you have to put a ton of roadblocks between your protagonist and what they really want. So I reinvented my afterlife, my view of the afterlife, and put some serious, serious roadblocks in her way. And the lesson became the lesson that I also had to learn, which is you think you have control because you're alive and you're there and you don't have control. They do what they're going to do. And so that the illusion of control doesn't end just because you die.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that a lot. Awesome. That sounds like a really good book. I will be definitely availing myself of that download. Thank you. Now,
Thank you.
I get that you've done a lot of evolvement, a lot of development. You're not the only person that I've heard that has talked about, I went into journalism to learn how to be concise, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And um, it's a great university, a great college for
Yes.
being able to tighten up your writing. Similarly, now you may not know this, a lot of my viewers do. I'm a huge Manilow fan. He started out writing commercial jingles, and
That's
that
right.
trained him in how to be able to write a hook where 5 decades he's had top
Mhm.
40 hits. That's
That's right.
pretty, longevity and consistency there. But
Yeah.
what I'm trying to pull out of this is that it is so important for writers of any type, whether it's jingles, whether it's music or words, whether it's novels or short stories, blogs, right? To learn that process of what specifically gets the point across, because all of this extra is just not going to help you at all. Would
That's
you
right.
disagree with that?
Not at all. I think the best thing about journalism was also that they would hand you back your paper and it wouldn't say A, B, C, D, or E. It would say R. And I remember the first time it happened to me in my first journalism class, and I went up to the instructor and I said, R? And he said, it just means rewrite. I said, what do you mean rewrite? He goes, well, it could be better. I'm like, it could be better. It's a C. It could be better. It's a B. And he said, it could be better. Sit down. And I thought, what? And that's what novel writing is about. It could always be better. You better take another crack at it. And it's frustrating, but you somehow magically have to figure out when you're done rewriting, but it's always about tighten it up, make it better. What parts could you lose? There's an old expression. I don't remember off the top of my head who said it, but kill your darlings. Get rid of the stuff that you just fell
Yeah.
in love with, but it's got nothing to do with anything.
Mm-hmm.
And when I teach my writing workshops, I talk a lot about that. You are going to endlessly rewrite no matter what you think. I had to learn that lesson the hard way, that it's not going to be good enough until you've rewritten it several, maybe many times. And you have to just accept it and enjoy the journey.
Yeah. 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 It is very interesting as well. I think for myself and other writers, I would imagine when you've put something away for a while that you thought was great, right? And you do let it simmer for a while, and then you go back and you reread what you've written, and you go, well, that was great 6 months ago. That was great 2 years ago. It's not, I could add so much more to it now, or I could tighten it up a bit better now. I learned this word in the meantime that, makes that point just pop kind of thing.
And it can happen in the opposite way too, where you get so discouraged that you set it aside thinking this is garbage. And then you go back to it, you realize, no, this is not garbage. This is 90% of what it ought to be, or 85. I can find that other 15% and make it better, but it's not so bad.
Right.
It's like pictures of yourself. It's like I've heard this expression too. If only I looked as bad as I looked when I thought I looked bad, or overweight. That's something I've struggled with my whole life. If only I was the same weight I was when I first thought I was overweight, I'd be very, very happy right now.
There you
So
go.
it's perspective.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So knowing, how much work and effort that it does take to get to where you want to be, what on earth was going through your mind when you decided to start trying to help other people through this process? What made you want to help other people do this?
Well, part of it is as I started speaking and just doing things like that for fun and telling people, yeah, I've written a novel. You get one of two reactions. Either you get, I've always wanted to write a novel or a book, or you get, oh, I could never do that. I would never be good enough to do that. I thought it's really the same statement said in two different ways. I don't have the confidence, but there's a book inside my head. And if I had the guts and if I had the confidence, I would write it. And I started to realize just from helping other people, little projects in my own writers group, I realized, I have learned a lot. 10 summers, in real intensive teaching, because I was not about how to get an agent, how to get a publisher. It's about how to become a better writer. 10 years of that and copious notes. I absorbed a lot of information, and I realized I actually know what's wrong with some of the things that I'm reading here and how they could make it better. I have some knowledge. And not everybody has the time or the money or the freedom to go and spend a week in Iowa every summer. My family was wonderful. I didn't do it till my kids were a little bit older, but not everybody can do that. And I thought, I can give them what I know. And the real serious ones will probably go anyway, because I'm not going to be able to impart everything that somebody with 50 years of teaching experience could give them. But I can give them the confidence to try to do something they've always wanted to do. And it feels so good when someone says, you know what, I'm writing. I love the workshop you did, the little writing prompt for 5 minutes. And then you said my stuff was good. And guess what, I'm writing. And it gives me such pleasure to hear that.
That's phenomenal stuff. I think that that's a very blessed purpose that you're doing. Let me ask this.
Yes.
Explain to me what the difference is between having a writing coach and having an editor.
Those are very different things. An editor is someone you typically pay to find your typos. Some are good enough to find the flaw in your plot. A writing coach is someone, and that editing process, it's has a beginning and an end. You pay them for so many hours of their time, and they give you their thoughts, and they're out. To me, a writing coach can be what you want that coach to be. Sometimes you end up just giving that weekly nudge to say, don't forget, you owe me a chapter. Come on, you owe me a chapter. Now, you don't send anything to an editor till you think you're all done. And you certainly don't send a rough draft to an editor, because you'd be wasting your money on getting the commas fixed in something you need to rewrite. Mm-hmm. So a coach is with you for the long haul, in my opinion. And I am very blessed that my husband makes enough money that I don't have to charge a lot for my coaching. So I can be there through the whole process, through many rewrites, through all the struggles to figure out even what do I need to write. I'm working with someone right now who has a goal, but every time he tries to achieve that particular writing goals, other kinds of writing pop out. And I've said to him, and we have a meeting tonight, you have a memoir that's trying to come out, and you better just write it. Forget this other stuff. Get that memoir written. It's the best stuff you hand me is the memoir. Write it. So a coach is there through the entire project, hopefully. That's my goal, at least.
That's phenomenal. Thank you for that. Because I know that they're two vastly different things, and maybe 2% of what they do cross paths, like a Venn diagram, right? Mm-hmm. An editor doesn't have time to coach you through, but they may, point out that you need some coaching. And then, a coach might catch a couple of typos, but that's not necessarily the job. I love I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, the typos and the commas, I point them out when I see them with a quick little mark, but that's the last thing you worry about. When you're all done, you worry about the commas and the spelling and all that stuff. Yeah. But what's the plot, and how does this story unfold? Does it get the point across that you told me you wanted to get across? That's the bigger picture, and I think that's where a coach comes in more than an editor.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with you. And I love the idea of I don't want to call it hand holding, but it is somebody holding your hand through the process. Because especially for me, when I'm writing about stuff and I'm imbuing it with my own experiences, sometimes that calls up an emotional state that, I push back from, right? And to have somebody hold my hand and go, it's okay. It won't, it won't eat you. Go ahead. I'm right here.
Yes. I've I have had people come to me after a writing workshop when they were in person, for example, and a woman came to me at the Indianapolis Public Library after I did a workshop, and she said, I need to write about my childhood. I was horribly abused. And every time I try to write it, I just start crying and I can't write. And I said, well, that is what a coach is for. We will take little bits and we will figure out, how do you process this? How are you going to package this experience so that you can handle it? Because you could probably do people a lot of good, especially young girls going through what you went through. You have a story to tell and you could save some lives. You have to get a little perspective on this. We have to treat it like a writing assignment, like English class, where you can get emotionally a little more distant from it so that you can write it. I'll give you little assignments to do, and you'll practice stepping away from the emotion. I might even have you write it in the third person, about as though it were someone else, and try a chapter like that and see if you can get perspective on it.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. One of the personal development programs that I was in, one of their processes is to write your story, like about your life, right? And it's not, a 10 chapter book. You get 20 minutes maybe to write down all the things that pop to the top of your head. And then you get a partner and you read it to them over and over and over again until it becomes emotionally neutralized, like you're separate from it.
Yes.
And, I too am one of those that wrote about their childhood. And man, is that cathartic. That may never end up being a book that's published out there. But I highly recommend that everybody should write their own story just to get it up and out and to be able to look at it objectively.
Yeah. And I had almost the opposite experience. One of my first years in Iowa, I was in a class that was mainly dealing with point of view. And the instructor said, send me an email over this, before the summer session begins. I want to know what you're looking for in my class. And I said, it was my first novel. I said, I'm writing about this woman and her 4 good buddies. They all sound alike. They all sound like me. And I don't understand. I'm not sure how to separate them. And because my writers group likes what I'm writing, and yet they can never remember who's who. And one of the things she told me after she read my 30 pages was, you in class make great jokes and tell great stories about your weight issue, being Jewish, raised in a Catholic suburb of Chicago. Why isn't any of that in your book? And I said, oh, well, it's not in my book because I read that it's just very amateurish to write about yourself. And she said, that's the dumbest thing anybody ever said to a writer. Everybody writes about themselves. And she said, have you ever read John Irving? And I said, yeah, I've read 3 or 4 books. And she said, you haven't noticed that every single book is about a boy who's lost his father? And I thought about it. I said, yeah, I guess you're right. And she said, that's because he lost his father. And she said, he writes about himself in every book he writes. Is anybody criticizing him for that? She said, you will become a much better writer when you embrace the fact that there's some things you know how to write about and make fun of and have fun with. Mm-hmm. And until you give those characteristics to your main character, this will not be the book it should be. And it did take me 2 years of thinking and muttering and trying it and dipping my toe. It took me 2 years to change. My main character was Karen Anderson, and I changed her to Karma Kransky, and I gave her all my worst problems and a much better book. So
I was going to say, it probably made it so much better for reading.
Much better. Yes, much better.
Yeah. Well, like my mother used to say, always write what you know, because if you write about what you don't know, the people that know will point it out.
That's very true. And then there's a twist on that I heard also in Iowa, which is if you don't want to write about what you know, write about what you wish you understood. Hmm. And as you learn about it and come to understand it, you'll be able to write that book too. And that's kind of the idea behind the Dead Mothers Club. My need to understand what does happen when you face your own mortality with your work undone. what what do you do about that? How do you wrestle with that?
Right.
So it can work both ways, thankfully.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Now, tell me, of course, this show started out as a response to the coronavirus quarantine. Everybody losing their jobs or spending a lot of time not working. Perfect time to pick up something that you've been working on and redo,
Yes.
rewrite, do a couple of edits. How did COVID-19 actually impact your new venture? What happened?
Well, I was excited to death that I was getting invited to go speak at libraries around central Indiana. And I would drive an hour and a half to get to a library and sit with 4 or 5 people and be totally jazzed about that. And in the back of my head, and I have a marketing woman, Julie Struble, who's a genius, who had always said to me, we're going to need to take this to a platform like Zoom eventually. If you want a bigger audience, you can't always be within driving distance of a library. And I would say, yeah, yeah, yeah. But that sounds like technology to me. And unless Dan Curry's going to move into my guest room, I'm not going to survive it. Along came COVID, and I had 3 or 4 library seminars all scheduled early, like in November of the previous year. Hey, we want a summer writing program. Would you help us? And I said, sure. I was going to get paid. I was so excited. And then they were calling me to say, well, the library's closed. We have to cancel unless you'd be willing to use Zoom. And by that time, I'd experienced Zoom with my networking groups and everything else that I do. And I said, yeah, I don't want to cancel. Let's move it to Zoom. And all of a sudden, I was forced to embrace technology and deal with it and not be frustrated by it. Or if I was frustrated, not throw my computer out the window, learn how to do it. And I have clients now on the West Coast and all over the place. And it's amazing. And I would never have done that if COVID had not forced me to embrace technology like Zoom. So I'm
Honestly,
not saying it was the best thing that ever happened to me because that sounds really awful, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me personally and professionally, I have to say.
Well, I have to agree with you because literally, like I just said, I wouldn't have this show if it wasn't for the quarantine. And honestly, there are so many good things that have come out of it. Not only good, it's not like there isn't bad things that have come out of this. But I am so grateful for the things that are good that have come out of it, and I'm sure you're the same.
Oh, I've met some people and I've coached some people and had people come to seminars that I would never have crossed paths with. And there's nothing better than that. Just nothing.
Awesome. Now, what are you
So,
working on right now? What's
well,
the
I'm
future for you?
future. I'm working on the sequel to Revenge of the Soccer Moms. In the first book, all the kids are preschoolers and they're all in a playgroup together. And so now they're all going into kindergarten in the next book. And when I was a stay-at-home mom, I was talked into helping to run the PTO at my kids' grade school. And nutty things happen in a PTO.
My mother was
And
a PTO president for a number of years. I know what you're
yes,
talking
mine,
about.
mine too. Mine was always the queen of the PTO. She ran every fundraiser. Now, in my case, I have to say it was a little bit selfish because about the time that I was asked to run the PTO, it dawned on me that there was some paperwork for my son, who we adopted from Vietnam. There was paperwork I'd never done because nobody held a gun to my head and made me do it. He did not have an Indiana birth certificate, and they weren't going to let him into school without one,
Mhm.
except that I ran the PTO. They're like, oh, yeah, you work on that when you have time, Miss Levine. It's fine. Yeah, of course, you can start kindergarten. And so I was like very happy to do that. And actually, it wasn't until he decided to do high school online where they didn't know me and didn't care and they don't have a PTO that I actually got him a birth certificate. I'm embarrassed to say. But that's when there was sort of a gun in my head. So lots of things happen in a PTO. You meet amazing women, wonderful women, crazy women. you learn lots of things that are going on in the school that you would never know. And that's the kind of stuff I love putting in novels. So it's going to be a sequel. I'm still working out the plot, but I'm about 3 chapters into the introduction.
Nice.
Where the women who get in so much trouble in book 1, that my main character, Karma Kransky, gets roped into heading the PTO, and she's about to have to deal with the fact that she has a felony on her record, or she might have a felony on her record, and you have to pass the background check to be able to be around the kids. So I'm throwing lots of trouble in her life, and I'm having so much fun with it.
That's phenomenal stuff. I'm very interested in reading this book. This sounds absolutely amazing. One of my favorite authors, Jim Butcher, will often get onto Twitter and go, "Oh, I've found a new way to torture my characters and make my readers cry." And it's true. There's a sense of joy that comes out of torturing a character enough that your audience is going, "Oh my God." Yes. So I 100% support you in making Karma Kransky's life hell.
That's right. But I suspect she will triumph in the end. She will learn nothing. She will not become a better person. I was told at one point, you really need her to undergo a fundamental transformation so that she understands where she went wrong in life, and she promises never to do it again. And I thought, okay, who does that?
Disney.
Yeah, no kidding. I said, well, if I'm ever going to write about her again, she can't be Mother Teresa. That wouldn't be interesting. Not that Mother Teresa is not interesting, because she's very interesting, but not as a character in a novel. So she has to keep her flaws. And I had heard, the problem is she's only sorry she got caught. I'm like, yeah, that's the only way I'm ever sorry, is when I get caught. What? Is it me? So, yeah, more trouble is coming her way. She may triumph, but she's going to work hard to do it.
That's phenomenal. Okay, so remind me again, all of our viewers are to be reaching out to you via email or Facebook, right?
Email or Facebook. I'll need email eventually if I'm going to send you a free book.
Yep.
But, yeah, by email, so you have to give me that.
Yep. So email Myra at myralevine.com. It's MYRALEVINE right there on the screen. And put, spotlight in the subject line so that she knows to send you the link for the downloadable copy of Dead Mothers Club, right? That's the name of it, The Dead Mothers Club. And if you're a writer, at least have a consultation with her. Come on. I mean, I think that this is probably one of the most comforting writing coaches that I've interviewed yet, as far as just cuddleability. You know that she's going to look out for you, and it's not going to hurt too bad.
No, I'll tell you the truth, but it won't hurt. I try to find the good, along with, here's the challenge, here's what we could work on. I don't think it's good to cut people off at the knees. I don't think that helps anybody.
I agree with you 100%. Do you have a couple last words for our viewers today? Anything you'd like to leave them with?
Well, the thing I always tell people in my writing workshops is, one, if you have a desire to write, you can write. And nobody should die with their story still inside them. And you don't have to win awards. That's not what it's all about. You can self-publish now. And you might even just print 10 copies of that book and hand them to your friends. And it still will be the most satisfying thing you ever did. Well, maybe aside from getting married and having good kids. But aside from that, it will be incredibly satisfying to do what very few people do. But everybody wishes they could do. You should do it.
Awesome. Fantastic advice. Thank you again so much for being with me today, Myra.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful, wonderful week.
You too.
When you open yourself up to actual energy work, makes that recovery progress so much faster. That recovery is possible. You do not have to live as a victim until your last days, you have unbelievable strength. And I know that because you're still here. Do you want to create something completely unrecognizable with your life? I can show you how.